Fellow members, good afternoon. Let's call the meeting to order. This is the panel on environmental affairs. I'd like to welcome the two new members, including Mr. Gary Fan and Mr. Tony Chair. I haven't seen Tony Chair yet. We've got a total of 24 members at the panel, which means that the quorum is 8. So please take note of that. Next, we have item 1, confirmation of minutes. Can we confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of January 2018? Paper number CB bracket 1670/1780. So far, we haven't received any proposed amendments. Let's confirm the minutes. Okay? Thank you. Item 2, welcome Mr. Tony Chow. Just now we have already welcomed Mr. Gary Fan, and you've been given a designated seat, whether it's in room 2 or room 3. Information papers issued since the last meeting. There is one paper, and that is set out in the agenda item. Items for discussion at the next meeting. Shall we invite the administration team to join us, please? So you want to press a button? If you want to do that, you have to sit in your designated seat. Well, let's have a show of hands instead then. Thank you. So can we now invite the administration to join us, please? The next meeting will be held at 2:30 p.m. on the 23rd of April, a Monday. And the items for proposed for discussion, one is the implementation details concerning renewable energy, energy efficiency and conservation, and fuel clause charge adjustment under the post-2018 scheme of control agreements. And B, rehabilitation of underground sewers and upgrading of Central and East Kowloon sewerage. Let me explain why we will cover also the fuel clause charge adjustment. Because that should have to do with electricity and should come under the ambit of the Economic Development Panel. But then the administration explained that the new scheme of control agreements will introduce a new mechanism for fuel clause charge adjustment, and in the government's SCA signed with the China Power before it takes effect on October 2018, there is no other occasion for the administration to brief the EDP on the new mechanism. And also the fuel clause charge adjustment is related to renewable energy, energy efficiency and conservation of energy. So the government has suggested that this item be included in item A, and we will also invite members of the EDP to join the discussion of this. The administration has consulted the chairman of the EDP, Mr. Jeffrey Lam, and he doesn't object to that arrangement. So, as I said, there will be 2 items. Any objection? No? Well, thank you very much then. Please get prepared for that. Let's move on to item 4, enforcement against illegal landfilling and fly tipping of construction waste. Paper has been provided by the administration. There is also a background brief provided by the Electrical Secretariat. And there are 3 papers tabled, which have been submitted by the Kaduri Farm and Botanic Garden Corporation, Worldwide Fund, Hong Kong, and also Safe Lantau Alliance. So these are the 3 submissions presented to us. So please take reference from those as well. So the administration, can you please walk us through the paper? Is it by the point? Is it going to be done by the way of a PPT show or what? Madam Chair, this paper briefs members on the enforcement actions taken by the government to combat illegal landfilling and fly tipping of construction waste. I believe members have read through the paper. Let's go directly into the discussion. Well, that's very good, very brief and succinct. So, A number of members are interested in asking a question, and administration, please don't mind, because right now we have ESC meetings. There are some dozen or so members who are sitting on both committees, so we might be going back and forth between the meetings. So 4 minutes each for each member. Mr. Peter Shiu, Edward Lau, Gary Chan, Kenneth Leung, Eddie Zhu, Tony Che, Leung Yu Chung, and Kwok Wai Kang. So first, Mr. Peter Shiu. Thank you, Chairman. Our Madam Chair. On fly tipping of construction waste, in previous meetings we have discussed that. I have served the electrical and I represent the Marble Hill, and I see all these illegally dumped construction waste all the time. I've called up the EPD and FEHD to help. So no matter what they do, there is still some construction waste dumped. Even if you catch them, well, the fine will be just $1,500. Maybe they would use a truck to dump it or deposit in the landfill. They have to pay for the vehicle and also the landfilling charge. So it's better for them to just deposit it here. Even if they are caught, they just have to pay $20,000 to $30,000. So that's where the question or the problem lies. How can you stop people from doing that? In the around the hills and the peak area, Repulse Bay, there is fly tipping of construction waste everywhere. The penalty is too lenient. You must impose heavier penalty. So maybe $20,000 should be fined for fly tipping of construction waste. You should pass on the cost to them. Maybe you can even criminalize such acts, or else the government hand is tied about this. And you are spending public money to help collect the construction waste. So have you considered raising the penalty, Madam Chair? Undersecretary, please. For fly tipping of construction waste, we will not just be issuing what we call a penalty ticket to them. We can also issue summonses, ask them to appear in court, and if that is the case, the court will, based on the circumstances, mete out a punishment. And the fine can be up to over $100,000 sometimes. We understand that the court or the judge may not understand the seriousness of the problem. So when we take our prosecutions in our relevant documents, we will set out all the impact of such a problem, and the judge will consider the circumstances and maybe impose a heavier penalty. And that is an effective approach. How many cases have been taken to the court? What is the fine level? Do you have a table? So can I ask my colleague, Mr. Au, the Deputy Director, to elaborate? In 2017, by summonses, we issued 75 summonses. 73 cases have been successfully convicted, and the highest fine is $25,000. At Brahma Hill well, alone, more than 70 cases are found. It's very difficult to catch these people. So how did you manage to catch them in the past? How did you collect the evidence? Well, maybe they dump the waste at odd hours. How did you do that? Mr. Au maybe can walk you through the approaches that we adopt. First, we will send people to patrol the different areas. And it's difficult to catch the offenders by patrolling. And a better approach we found that now is at black spots. We will install cameras, surveillance cameras. And we found that we can actually monitor the situation 24 hours a day. And sometimes they would they carry the construction waste by trucks or vans, and then we can get the registration mark or the license plate of the vehicles. Well, do it more often at Brahma Hill. I've been calling the police numerous times. The district councillor is very responsible here. So maybe in a minute you would try to, can you respond to that? Mr. Edward Lau, or rather Mr. Kenneth Lau. Well, at the black spots, you said you will install surveillance cameras, and that can be deterrent. And black spots have been installed with such cameras, but then there will be new black spots all coming up all the time, so you're scratching the surface of the problem. And it's impossible for the government to install surveillance cameras at all locations all over Hong Kong. That would be a good and effective method. I don't object to this scheme being expanded to cover more parts of Hong Kong. But then I found that in public places and in government land, the number of reports of illegal fly tipping of construction waste has been, the case number has been increasing ever. And the number of prosecutions and the fixed penalty tickets are on the low side. And ultimately, it would be the Highways Department and the FHD who are paying for all these, the removal exercises. The government can issue penalty tickets, and the government is discussing with the police on various schemes. Maybe you can set up a hotline for people to report on illegal cases, even during the odd hours. And meanwhile, they can notify the police immediately, and patrols should be stepped up, and more approaches should be adopted to combat fly tipping. I agree that the penalty should be increased because those who are dumping the construction waste are facing risk as well, and they would be mindful about the penalty as well. So for the black spots, can you install more surveillance cameras? For the EPD, indeed, we are partnering with different government departments. Different departments have their law enforcement powers on this on the problem, and we'll coordinate among them. At the black spots, we'll work together with our other government departments to stage special operations to catch the offenders. As for the specific enforcement actions and the details, can I defer to Mr. Au to elaborate? The member just asked about law enforcement. There are three approaches. First, we will use our staff to patrol to catch the offenders on site. And then we have installed 7 surveillance cameras all over Hong Kong at the black spots. And we found that the cameras to be effective. Well, you can see that there is a difference in places without such a camera and with such a camera. And we have successfully taken a prosecution on cases with the use of surveillance cameras. And sometimes the members of the public have taken photos and video footages and passed them over to us, and they are willing to be witnesses. And for these cases, we have successfully prosecuted the offenders. We would be installing more surveillance cameras in different black spots in the future, and we would also to work together with to dovetail with the government's smart city initiative. We want to install cameras in the smart lampposts as well.
What target do you have for increasing the surveillance cameras? 70 to 7,000, or besides the 70, within this year, we will install 20 more. And for the smart lampposts, there will be more than 100 such lampposts erected at various black spots. We also collaborate with Food and Environmental Hygiene Department at refuse collection point black spots. There will be surveillance cameras of up to 100. Well, quite a lot. Next one is Chair Ken. Chairman, illegal land filling and fly tipping is not just getting more serious in urban areas, it is also very rampant in the new territories. If the government does not act, it would either be paying no attention or cannot do. There is 105 complaints in 2017, and the number of summons numbered less than 1%. So now there are 50 surveillance cameras in black spots to be risen to 70, and it could be further increased to 100. But that really is a little remedy, it's a limited remedy. Last week, I was having a meeting with Taipo residents, and here you can see from this picture, there is a private brownfield site filled with containers, which is in breach of the law. The lease was revoked, and yes, every day there are dump trucks engage in dumping activities there. And the dumping activity may be held on the slopes outside the boundary of the site. If you go to take a look in the New Territories, you can find many cases of such illegal dumping. And people said they've complained to the Lands Department and EPD, and yet the situation has not improved. Every day you see the illegal dumping in the New Territories. So the surveillance cameras, would they be on Hong Kong Island, urban areas, or in the New Territories? When you see the problem, how would you deal with it? If you just issue summons, holding them responsible for a fine of 20,000, well, they make a lot more than the penalty of 20,000, so there's no deterrent effect. Even if the lease is actually revoked, they're not scared. They still continue with the illegal activity. Yeah, they're not afraid of having the lease revoked. So what can you do? The surveillance cameras installed are not just in the urban areas, but they are scattered in various black spots. Well, you said that we received 10,000 complaints, and yet there are only 100 surveillance cameras. So there seems to be a big gap. But the fact is, among the complaints, many are repetitive. Complaints about the same location. My observation is there are lots of black spots because of topography or the remote locations of the sites, and that's where dumping occurs. And people wouldn't dump waste in the middle of the road. So I believe that if we can, in the 100 black spots, take actions there, our experience shows that the installation of surveillance cameras is useful. If we target the black spots, we believe that it will be useful in combating fly tipping. And member also mentioned that there are people having fly dumping in private lots. So that's a complex issue. Often we can see that people disposing the waste in their private land because they want to, for example, fill up a hole or set up a boundary wall and so forth. So we need to differentiate between dumping in private lots or fly tipping in public areas. So under the Waste Disposal Ordinance, it's stipulated that in private lands, well, theoretically, but private lands do not belong to the government. If they want to dispose the waste in private lands, then the owner's consent has to be sought. And we also need to be notified, and then we should offer an approval to them. That makes it easy for the EPD to tell whether it is a case of fly tipping or an activity arranged by the owner himself. And secondly, once the government has got the information, we know whether there will be landfilling or illegal fly tipping, and then we can notify the relevant government department concerned, whether it's the Lands Department or not. Just let them know, or whether, like the Planning Department, whether the activity is in line with the law, or whether it's some activity conducted by the CEDD and so forth. So we need to make sure that the departments can take follow-up action when needed. So to see whether it is a case of filling up in a particular spot. Next one is Lang Kai-chang. Thank you, Chairman. I know the department is testing the GPS system and asking the waste collection vehicles to be installed with GPS. But I'd like to know the progress of the testing so far. If you are satisfied with the testing, would you require all waste collection vehicles to be installed with the system? And if you so require, would there be a need for legislation? Thank you. Undersecretary, I can ask Ms. Lam to give you the details of the scheme. But in the past, our tests found that on the technical side, it is successful. So installing GPS on vehicles, the GPS system, we found that it is technically feasible. But we've also found that there are other concerns in relation to the law. For example, issues about personal privacy. So we found that it's not about technology, but it's rather about technical issues that we need to deal with. So at this stage, we will first of all target government contracts. That is to ask the government contractors to install GPS on the vehicles so that firstly we can widely implement the GPS on large-scale government works. I believe the waste generation activity will be covered. And also through a contractual agreement, we can have more flexibility. We hope that we can implement it quickly and then gather experience in how to tackle, for example, safety or privacy insurance issues. We want to collect more experience first before going to the next stage or deciding whether to legislate. You're right, if we want to make it mandatory, then legislation will be needed. So Ms. Lam could supplement. Ms. Lam? Could you turn on the mic, please? As the Undersecretary just said, earlier on we carried out some tests on projects of CEDD, and internally we also did some tests. We hired a consultant to do the technical feasibility test, and we confirmed that the GPS technology is applicable. But in the process, we heard from stakeholders, well, some of whom supported the idea and they thought that it's a big trend and that can help the image of the industry as a whole and also can help with their management. But on the other hand, some stakeholders expressed worries about the costs concerned, whether it will increase the costs and also with the data collected, if the data are mishandled, then there could be hacking. So we are now turning our attention to applying it on government works first and trying to get experience in using the system, and then later on we can decide on how to carry it out on a wider scale possibly and enhance our law enforcement, the effectiveness of our enforcement. Has the government got any statistics on how many vehicles, construction waste collection vehicles, do you have the figure? Right now, for large size vehicles entering government-managed construction waste collection facilities, I think there are about 500, a little more than 500. I think you need to follow up on this matter. Thank you. Next one, Eddie Chu. Thank you, Chairman. Short questions here. Firstly, for the planning department, Ms. Chuk, I can see from news reports that the Sharlang, next to Lowu, there's case of illegal dumping there, and end of last year, you issued a request for restoring the site to its original state. So how are you going to follow up on this case? In Sandy Ridge, I heard that the site has not been restored to its original state. So what's the progress now? From the map that I've got, it used to be a green field. Would you ask the party concerned to restore it to its original green state? And my second question is for Mr. Fogg from FEHD. Last year, the Food and Health Bureau, in a answer to Chairman Peng on 807 refuse collection points in rural areas, and I found that most of them were not manned. And now this flight tipping issue. Often the waste was dumped at the refuse collection points. So would you consider installing surveillance cameras at the stations? And my third question is, I don't know who should answer this, but in South Lantau, because of under the urban planning ordinance, the planning department cannot actually have proper management of the areas. Like for places in Pt1 where dumping occurs, has the administration talked to Rural Committee in South Lantau about the issue? I believe that for the 700 villages in 27 Hung, if dumping occurs in one of the villages, any of the villages, chairman of the Rural Committee or the village chief would be aware of that. Have you made contact with them to see who should be held responsible for the illegal dumping? And also, you can find out about what the villagers think of the problem. Have you communicated with the people there? So let's answer the questions one after another. Maybe you can ask Ms. Chuck to answer first. Ms. Chuck first. On Sandy Ridge, it is a case of breach of the law involving illegal land filling. The site itself is a vacant farmland. Under our land zoning plan, the area is zoned for farming activity. When we dealt with the case, we issued a compulsory order asking the party concerned to stop the land filling activity. And then, as members said, we wanted to reinstate it to its original state. So what has happened so far? Under the ordinance, we are entitled to issue the order to reinstate the piece of land and to put the land under control so that within the settled period for the plan. And then, but what are you actually doing now for the case? We are actually taking actions, and before we bring the place under control, it used to be a farmland, the area concerned. And after the illegal flat tipping or land filling occurred, the site was a vacant farmland, but the area is zoned for agricultural activity. So we asked that the land should be removed. All the waste material should be removed, and then greenery and planting should take place at the site to restore the area to its original state. And we will look at the planning intention and the surrounding environment of the site. And the issue would expire. The issue of notice will be expired in, was expired in end of February, but no follow-up action has been taken up.
Mr. Eddie Chu, maybe we can have a second round of questions. Maybe they can answer you in that second round. Next, Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I would like to thank the governing departments concerned to provide us with the relevant information on your enforcement action against illegal land filling and fly tipping of construction waste. The paper made several points. First is amendment of legislation, and then second, leveraging on technology, and also in asking contractors to adopt the trip ticket system, TTS. Madam Chair, members have raised a number of issues, and the problems are still with us. We know the present situation, of course, but I would like to ask the government, what are the measures that you're considering to tackle the problems? What is the timetable? You said that you're going to install more surveillance cameras, etc. Please give us the full picture. We're not happy with the effectiveness of these measures. There are many complaints. Some of them may be repeated complaints overlapping each other. But then still we think that the solutions could not address the problems. I want to be more forward-looking. Let's be more forward-looking. What are the solutions that can help tackle the problem? Share those with us. Then we know what you're going to do. But all you said is that you've done something and there's been some improvements. And what the members of the public would like to find out is what solutions do you have? There will be, there was indeed amendment of legislation, but has it proved effective? And what about the question of registration? You started the program in October 2017, and we need time to look at the results. But don't wait too long. If the solutions found to be ineffective, think of some other measures. So I would like to know whether the government has any forward-looking solutions, targets, etc. Give us a share the information and more systematically, so that after even we have a discussion, then still the problems still persist. Okay, so timetable, roadmap, and targets. Well, let's take an objective look. Mr. Chair, you are very well aware of this. There is quite a number, a volume of C and D waste created every day. It's in big volume. And if we compare the illegally or flight-tipped C and D waste compared with the total volume of C and D waste, it's only a small percentage. I think our measures have been effective, but the question is, there are often these group of people. They may not be in large number. They are, for convenience sake, they are dumping C and D waste, say by the hillside, etc. The black spots, say, are usually located, say, in the dead end of a roundabout, and it's near a hill, and it's not very accessible. So people will dump their C and D waste there. And there are some other scenarios whereby the landowners, because they would like to buy cheap materials to do landfilling, and in the process they are also creating an impact on people in the vicinity. So we think we can deal with this on two fronts. First, we will try to identify black spots. There are indeed black spots, and in these black spots we'll install surveillance cameras, and there is a great difference between places without and with such cameras. Sorry, Madam Chair, I've gone over time. I don't want to be given preferential treatment. I'm a newcomer to the electrical. What I'm concerned about is that going forward, what are they going to do? Maybe the Undersecretary can write or give us a paper giving us the overall or the full picture. If there is time, then I can ask again. Second round for you, maybe. Mr. Leung Yiu-chung, the Undersecretary tried to water down the problem. He said that for a majority of the C and D waste, it's been handled properly, and what causes a problem is only a small volume of C and D waste. But then, even if the volume is small, there has been serious environmental impact. But you didn't say that. You said that it's just minor. The quantity is small. I think it's regrettable that the government adopts this perspective. Look at how much damage that has been done. You should be looking at it from that direction. That's the right direction. In your answer to Mr. Tony Chair, I think you just want to play down the issue. Second, I think the problem now is very serious. When you answer another member's question, you said that there is this waste disposal ordinance in place. Well, the waste disposal ordinance is quite useless. It doesn't help at all. It's helping the landowners to prove that they are not involved or committing fly tipping. So that doesn't help at all. What we hope you can do is to try to legislate on this, impose heavier penalties. But then the planning department, in their early response to my question, said that legislation would be very complicated. It's not an easy task at all. So my question is how complicated it is. The SAR government is dealing with all sorts of complicated issues. Now, what matters is whether you think the problem is serious. If you think the problem is serious, even if it is a complicated issue, you will try to resolve it. So how complicated is it? How difficult is it to legislate on this problem and to take out prosecutions? on such fly tipping of construction waste. Undersecretary, on the town planning ordinance, if amendment is to be made, I will defer to the planning department's colleague. Regarding waste disposal ordinance, the aim of that ordinance is to deal with fly tipping on private plots. So if we have to differentiate between fly tipping or some activities approved by the landowners, it's quite difficult. It's not the case that they notify us and then approve it. It's not that. Now, once we've been notified, we will tell all government departments for them to check whether the land leases conditions have been complied with, whether there is environmental impact and so on. So we will be following up on all those issues. We know that there are suggestions in the community saying that under the WDO, we should be empowered to deal with cases where the activities will do damage to the ecology and they are not in line with the planning intention of the plots. We understand that, but the relevant cases are in the court. And when we drew up the legislation at the outset, we didn't have that kind of objective. So we're waiting for the court's judgment. We will see what the the court's ruling will be before we consider whether amendment to legislation is necessitated. As for the town planning ordinance, can I defer to the DPs to supplement? Ms. Chuck, on the TPO, I would like to speak on two aspects. First is about the penalty, as is a member's concern. The penalty in the past was decided upon by the court. The first-time offense carried a fine of $500,000. A second offense, $1 million. And in the past couple of years, we found that as we provided more information to the court, the penalty has got heavier. So we want to walk along that direction. We try to provide more information to the courts. In the past few cases recently, the fine has been quite heavy. Several hundreds of thousands of dollars were fined. So that's about penalty. Second, in places we don't have enforcement power like South Lantau, as pointed out by the member, it involves difficult or complicated technical and legal issues. And we will look at the actual circumstances of the locations and also our own resources. The department is very concerned about this, and we are keeping a close tab on the development of the situation. And we will take appropriate action when necessary. Mr. Kwok Wai-kang, illegal landfilling is concentrated in the north, in the new territories, but in the urban areas, we are seeing scattered cases of fly tipping of construction aid waste, and it's a headache. You would install surveillance cameras at black spots, but then black spots come in different classes. Now, if black spots are retrofitted with surveillance cameras, then people will find another place to dump their construction waste, and that will then become some black spots in the future. It's not the case that they will go back to the proper venues once cameras have been installed. That will not be the case. Now, you are just acting in response to complaints now, and this approach should not suffice. We hope the government departments can strengthen patrol and law enforcement action. So in terms of manpower, what are you going to do to help the EPD and other government departments to strengthen their patrol? You will not act only upon telephone complaints. You should also try to act upon identifying irregularities in your patrol exercise. Indeed, we are exactly doing that. We are reviewing our manpower arrangement right now. In the past, we used it to focus on patrolling during the office hours. Maybe we are now considering whether we can redeploy our manpower to patrol during non-office hours. That will help in cracking down on fly tipping. Recently, we've been exploring a new direction based on our latest experience, and that is if an average member of the public sees that there is there is a dumping of construction waste, he can take a photo of the license number, and if he is willing to appear as witness in court, then we can easily take the offender to court. And we've seen successful cases of prosecution under that approach. If more members of the public are willing to help us and monitor the situation, that will help us a lot. Let me ask if the members of the public have heightened awareness of the situation and try to provide information to you in helping you investigate into certain cases, and that would be good. But I'm a bit worried. Usually people work long hours. And my question is, have you talked to the police? Because the police now is only the police which have the power to review video footages of cameras installed by the private shops and so on. So can you seek the police's assistance in handling the matter? Yes, we conduct a joint operation exercise together with the police. We also learn from the police on how to do a law enforcement, collect evidence, and so on. Can I defer to Mr. Ao to say something more about our cooperation with the police? When we go to patrol in the districts, we will work together with the police because there are also safety concerns. Regarding surveillance cameras, our guideline is that the camera should be installed just for that purpose, and then the EPD and the HD can review the footage for law enforcement actions. And we are also trying to make use of information provided by members of the public to take out prosecutions. There have been successful cases of prosecution on that front.
President Leung, Chairman, I know that most of the large-sized waste actually pose a problem, not just in the New Territories, but Sham Shui Po also. You may recall that a few of us did inspect the situation in Sham Shui Po, particularly, the stockpiling of, waste, and residents there find them a big nuisance. At night, all these wastes were put there, and besides causing problem to the hygiene, it also poses threat to law and order, because you can find a waste refrigerator. And when we carry out the inspection, the waste were cleaned up. But if you go there on other time, like after 8 at night, you can see all the problems there. And we proposed back then that, of course, inspection rates are needed, but we need to carry out the rates in such a way that the streets would be cleared of the waste without blocking vehicles and also pedestrians or drivers' visibility. And we should also find appropriate places, not right in the heart of urban areas, to put the waste. Waste in the sense of materials still with economic value. So I'd like to know, the EPD, how do you see the problem? Do you think that, or have you increased manpower for inspection rates? Has the situation improved? Because this is a huge problem, a sore to residents affected. The handling of waste pile up on the streets It involves actually various government departments. I'll first of all ask FEHD to respond first. Thank you, Chairman and Ms. Lang. My understanding is that in Sham Shui Po, the District Council is very concerned, and our department is also concerned about the issue. Right now, FEHD, together with the police, actually carry out sometimes joint night raids to clear up the ways. And if there are any breaches of the law, we'll lodge prosecutions. Our colleagues will continue to address the issue. I know. But your answer is very vague. Have you increased manpower? And is it that you check on the situation every day and also for more hours a day? Can you be more specific? Last time during our visit, your colleagues came with us and we said that we told you we would follow up on this matter. Have you got any specific figures on, for example, the number of staff sent on the inspections? And has the situation improved at all? How about the number of hours spent on the inspection? And also, is it that after nightfall, the waste would not be accumulated anymore on the street? Any specific results? In Sham Shui Po, well, I know the problem is quite serious, and we have increased resources for the district, particularly cleaning workers. But I can't tell you the hours involved yet. I also mentioned just then, like with shops, have you talked to them? That is about finding a place for them to place recyclable waste. Is it Mr. Wong could answer? Yes, thank you for the question. We, together with the police and the FEHD, are following up on the matter raised by Ms. Lang. And through the district office, we have talked to the shop owners in the district. That is particularly at night when they unload goods. And, they're blocking or obstructing the roads in the front of the shops. We are considering whether we can provide other measures to help them deal with the goods. We are going to suggest proposals at the district level and then share them with stakeholders and district council and see what people think of them. One more point, Chairman. I hope that you can be specific. It was a few months ago when we went there, and yet the situation seems to have remained the same. Okay, you may queue up in the second round. There are only 2 colleagues now in the second round. Well, okay, Mr. Chen Chi-chun in the first round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I was at the establishment subcommittee on this issue. Because of illegal landfilling, the illegal landfilling in private lands, after reinstating the original site, in Sandy Ridge lately, there are 200,000 square meters of fish ponds and farmland were subject to illegal dumping, and it resulted in serious flooding. But it seems like the places concerned have not been restored to the original state. I think the best forceful deterrent against illegal dumping is the order of reinstating the site to its original state. Because you need to have a forceful order before changes or improvement can be made. So can the administration tell us the Annex 2, okay, what percentage of the notices of reinstatement mentioned in Annex 2 were implemented, resulting in full restoration of the case? Would you help the parties concerned to reinstate the site, for example, having them remove illegal structures? I don't know if the same question was asked, but it's okay. Under Secretary, please. I think you were referring to the notices issued by Planning Department. So I'll ask the Planning Department, Ms. Chuck, to answer. You're talking about the situation in Sandy Ridge. The order to reinstate the place, actually, the issue had a period of 3 months for them to take action, and the notice expired in February, and then we have sent our staff to look at the situation. We found that the party has not yet restored the site to its original state, and so we are still following up on the issue. As mentioned in Annex 2, about the figures mentioned there, including from 2014 to 17, the number of notices issued, reinstatement notices issued. If they have reinstated the land, we would issue a completion notice, but that figures are not included in the chart. Okay, so you are doing follow-up. What does it mean? If all along no improvement is done, then what would you do? What would be the next step? The completion note. Can you give us the figures as well on that? And also, is it feasible for us to do the reinstatement for them and then give them a bill? Is that okay? Would that be done? Ms. Chuck, can you answer that? For the case of Sandy Ridge, the notice expired in February. Normally speaking, once we found that, like in that case, they have not complied, then our next action would lodge prosecution. We will prepare information concerned, and then we would lodge prosecution. And that's in relation to the case in Sandy Ridge. And also, in accordance with the ordinance, if the party concerned does not comply with the notice, then the government can take action on its own. That is to do the requirement mentioned in the notice, and the relevant costs will be sought through civil proceedings. So, have you got any figures for us? Yes. In the past, there were cases which required the government to take unilateral action to actually make sure that the condition and notice is complied with. I can provide you with the information. Okay, next one, Vice Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Following Chen Chi-chung's, sorry, please turn on your mic. Following up on Chen Chi-chung's question. Annex 2, 2017. Planning Department's 146 public reports received, and number of prosecutions numbered 86. Seems good. And then warning notice issue 154, and then enforcement issue notice 610 and reinstatement notice 420. The figures are here, but what about the figure of reinstatement? For reinstatement, I know you issue the notice, but often, people may not follow what's mentioned, required in the notice. So could you give us the follow-up figures, please? And then NS3, I'm not looking at figures before. 2016, they're not satisfactory. Just look at 2017. EPD's flight tipping figures. Public reports received 1,850. Prosecutions are only 75. Is it on the low side? So, but if number of prosecutions or summonses number 75, then fixed penalty takers 23, which comes to below one third of the number of summonses. And then warning letters issued 3 only. Does it refer to before actions were taken or what? It's not clear to me. EPD figures alone don't suggest a satisfactory situation. Same for Lands Department, which recorded 0 figures, Highways Department 0 figures, FEHD, some actions taken. EPD did the best already. So how are we going to interpret these figures? What does it show about our law enforcement? What are the reasons for the weak enforcement? Is it because the property owners will just fix things themselves? Or is it that we have no way to prosecute, or because of limited manpower or lack of evidence, or what, then we can't take action? How should we look at these figures? Under Secretary, please. Thank you, Vice Chairman. So once we received the public reports, well, there are a large number of reports. The numbers are huge. And the number of prosecutions in terms of summonses and fixed penalty tickets, you can combine them two together, actually. You can combine them, indeed, to reflect the state of prosecution. So you can see that whenever possible, we will issue summonses to call people to, because you call people to show up in court, and it has a bigger deterrent effect. And members just then asked that if we were to catch people fly tipping in public areas, it's not easy, because by the time our staff arrive at the site, they may have gone. So even if you carry out inspection raids, often the fly tipping only happens when there's no one around. So it's not easy to catch the lawbreakers. So we focus on the black spots and install surveillance cameras there. We found that that's an effective measure, because we could make arrests, and also places, actually the situation of fly tipping improved after the surveillance cameras were installed. We also found that when the public saw dumping happen and take a picture, if they could take picture of showing the license plate of a vehicle, that can be used as evidence. And based on that, we can launch prosecution, and we have cases of successful prosecution already. So I hope that through targeting black spots and the cameras, we can get much done. And if the public can be more involved, then our surveillance can be expanded.
We believe that will help in law enforcement. Okay, the last member speaking for the first round, Mr. Ted Hui. My observation is that particularly in urban areas, EBD will enforce a waste disposal ordinance, not permitting to dump the waste, or else it will be taken to prosecution. But in effect, C and D waste and the paraphernalia will be put together. I've received a complaint, and then we came there onto the site, and they said that the FHD and the EPD said that they are valuable stuffs. So that's not considered construction waste. Now, your paper mentions about interdepartmental collaboration, and that refers to information exchange, intelligence exchange. But then in many cases, you didn't know how to define the stuffs that are deposited there, and no government department was willing to tackle it. And then there's been a delay of a few weeks before a government department came forth and deal with it. For such cases, you should have collected evidence in a short time and earlier, but you missed that opportunity. So how are you going to deal with these cases? You talk about black spots being installed with surveillance cameras, but how do you define a black spot? How many prosecutions have to be taken out before you define a certain place of a black spot? And people are very confused by what you designate as black spots. Okay, the bell for in room 3 is being rung, and maybe a vote would have to be taken. Do we have any members from the PESC who have to go to the meeting? Mr. Tony Jack, please. You may leave, and we can continue the meeting. Now, Mr. Hui referred to our implementation work, so can I defer to Mr. Ao? Mr. Hui referred to abandoned stuff, which is not just waste, and a number of government departments are involved. Among the government departments, we have set up interdepartmental working group, and this working group can expeditiously coordinate our efforts, and we will try to deal with all the abandoned stuff as soon as we can, and we can take our prosecutions. And for black spots, we have in mind several factors. One, whether there are complaints, the number of complaints in each location. Second, our colleague will conduct patrol and collect information to determine whether it's a black spot. And then third, we will talk with the district councillors and the residents to delineate or determine the black spots. So there are a total of over 70 black spots. If construction materials and construction waste are lumped together, which government department is responsible? Well, it depends on the location. So if it's public place, the FEHD and we will join hands to deal with it. Or you may even take out prosecution. Of course, it depends on the evidence gathered. We also work closely with FEHD, and once the evidence is sufficient, the respective government departments will take our prosecutions. I think we have to take a break because the members who would like to ask a second round, they're not here. Maybe we will suspend the meeting for 3 to 4 minutes. Sorry.